Battlefront Elite Squadron is fine. Look, it's not a bad game or anything, but with it having Battlefront 3's DNA, and being a sequel to Renegade Squadron, a game I was pleasantly surprised with, I was expecting more from it than a stick, a story, and an ion cannon. There are definitely new maps, but because they replaced the ones found in the prior game, they don't feel like additions. You either prefer the selection from Renegade, or you prefer the selection from Elite. I'd say I fall into the former camp, but that might have to do with the extra focus on space battles and the ion cannon. One of the game's biggest selling points is that every conquest match is a mixture of ground and space. You can take a ship and fly into the sky, entering the space battlefront, and vice versa, spawn in and take a ship down to the planet's surface to help capture command posts. It's not seamless by any means. There's a cutscene for entering and leaving a capital ship, and entering and exiting, space. There's even ways the two battlefronts interact with each other, such as the ion cannon lowering the capital ship's shields, and the orbital cannon firing down onto the surface. On paper, that doesn't sound half bad, and it was probably for the best that a Battlefront game gave the dual war fronts concept a solid shot, especially considering how popular of an idea it is, but for me, it felt too repetitive. After you've done the meta 10 or so times, you'll be desperate to do literally anything else, even if it's not as effective of a strategy. The new weapons they added are minor and kind of silly, the lack of vehicle variety is glaringly obvious, Galactic Conquest feels worse than in Renegade, and the story, for how much they seem to have been proud of it, considering the lengthy and epic intro to the game's start screen, eventually leading to the two brothers of the story staring each other down, isn't great. Surprisingly, the DS version of the game won in that regard. It's true, this technically isn't a PSP exclusive this time. A different developer, N-Space, was given the task to bring this game to the Nintendo DS. It's not something I'd write home about. In fact, I really didn't enjoy my time with it, but it is better than the PSP version in at least a couple ways. I'll cover both the best I can in this review, so hold on to your pokey sticks and locked off bowcasters. Let's talk about all things Battlefront Elite Squadron. Because this is so similar to Renegade, I won't be laying out how this is different from the console games again. The control scheme is largely carried over, with the auto-targeting lock-on mechanic. You can customize your equipment loadout with the point system, and you can personalize your appearance. There's medals you can earn, which are similar to Renegade, but a few of them are specific to online, so, well, that's out. And this time, they actually unlock things, such as cosmetics or equipment options. For instance, capturing flags is required, I guess, to be allowed use of the speed level 3. The Conquest game mode received a giant overhaul, where before you had the ticket system, where the number at the top represented reinforcements which would tick down for each death, and automatically dwindle on its own if the team held fewer command posts than the opponent. Now it's a race to a score of 1,000. Killing enemies nets your team points, having more command posts sees your number increase quicker than the opposition, and on the space frontier, destroying parts of the capital ship wins you some, such as the engines, turrets, bridge, and comm relay, and destroying the capital ship itself grants a huge point gain, 200, and prevents the enemy from using their orbital cannon and from spawning in their hangar. There's a lot of reasons why this take on Conquest feels worse. First of all, the connection between land and sky means that, at any moment, the enemy team could land a soldier-spawning ship in your backyard to capture the command post you've been ignoring. I don't hate this idea, not at all, but because it's possible on every single map, it doesn't feel like a special thing anymore, it's just what happens. You'll lose command posts constantly due to the warfront being so chaotic, with soldiers and ships sprinkled all over the place. Remember platforms on Bespin in Battlefront 1? If you played that map enough, you might remember how often your back command posts were taken over due to the abundance of ships all around. It seemed like every other minute you were losing ground due to sneaky pilots landing in your area without a fight. While you were focusing on pushing forward on foot, your reinforcement count would start to drop due to the progress lost from behind. For one or two maps, that's a fun concept. It can get a little tedious at times, but it's a flavor of platforms. You know you're in for something a bit different when it shows up. Since it's the norm now, it just feels like you're perpetually fighting against the current. You can take all of the command posts, but when you're playing with bots, and especially in Galactic Conquest with fewer troops than the enemy, it takes a lot of effort to maintain everything. Perhaps this wouldn't feel so bad if it was like the old Conquest game mode, where you could solo everything if you wanted to, but with how the scoring is, that's not as possible anymore. The new method of victory is the second reason Conquest mode doesn't feel as good. The goal of simply earning 1,000 points means battles don't have a distinct and satisfying conclusion. the total number of available troops isn't diminishing, the match simply ends whenever one team crosses the arbitrary finish line. Whereas you might have had to hunt down the last enemy if you didn't have all the command posts, or you could be the final survivor yourself, putting the entire team on your shoulders in hopes to squeak out a victory. Now, the final moments before a victory or a defeat feels identical to the middle of the conflict. Everyone's fighting like normal, but then the magic number is hit and everybody goes home, I guess? Unless you're keeping a close eye on the scoreboard, you'll rarely notice how close to the end of a match you are. I'll admit, when the teams are neck and neck, and you win by only a handful of points, that's a great feeling, but even still, the dynamics of the conflict aren't a cozy 3-act structure any longer. The opening of a match is the only distinct section of it all, rushing to capture the vacant command posts. The highest priority on the battlefield is the ion cannon, and this is the third reason Conquest Mode gets old fast. While you can rack up the scoreboard a bit by destroying some of the exterior of the ship, the real prize is going in and taking out the reactor, netting hundreds of points. While it may appear like Battlefront 2's sabotage and capital assault on the surface, the way the outer shields work in Elite Squadron makes it feel quite different. The shields don't protect the points of interest outside the ship, like the engines and the bridge. No, you can fire at and destroy those without any foreplay required. The shield only serves to stop enemy ships from entering the hangar. If they're down, you'll get the auto-docking cutscene, but if they're still up, you'll insta-die, splattering against the siding. To get the shield down, you have two options. Fire at it endlessly from space, which I wouldn't recommend trying solo, as it takes forever for that number to reach 0. I did it for half a battle once, and it just doesn't seem practical at all. The other option is to fire the ion cannon at the capital ship from the ground. 2 well-charged blasts should do the job, and that's that. Seems too easy, right? Well, it is, but that's why fighting for the command post that has the ion cannon attached is so vital. You can't interact with it if your team isn't holding it. In fact, if the enemy turned the command post neutral while you were here, it'll throw you out and say you aren't allowed to use it. It also doesn't start fully charged. Even after capturing the command post, you'll need to wait a long time for the temperature to hit the right number, I guess? I don't know, but the voiceover guy sure talks about it a lot.
Secure the ion cannon. We need to defeat the Alliance capital possession of the ion cannon. Only way to destroy the enemy capital ship, the Alliance capital ship shield.
Like I said, this is the meta of the Conquest game mode. You load in, hope you spawned on the ground level, but if not, hop in a ship, pilot down to the surface, hopefully land. Go for the ion cannon command post, capture it, hold it, use it, nab a starfighter, invade the enemy's capital ship, take out the reactor, escape, and more often than not, you're home free. This is 1/5 of the total score needed to win the match, and if you capture the ion cannon, you've already worked towards gaining ground and points along the way. It's certainly not overpowered enough to be a guaranteed win, such as when down troops in Galactic Conquest. I defended Bespin with 10 troops to the enemy's 50, and it wasn't even close. They had every command post when I came back. But still, it's definitely the encouraged way to play, and the incessant HQ voice lines nagging you to do the strategy step by step don't help things.
We must take possession of the ion cannon. It's the only way to destroy the enemy capital ship shield. The ion cannon to deplete the enemy capital ship shield. Only then can we board it and destroy the reactor. Maximum power level has been reached by the ion cannon. Their shields are offline. Board that thing. Take control of a starfighter. We need your help in orbit. Jump in a starfighter. We need you in space. Take control of a starfighter. We need your help in orbit. Destroy the reactor core so we can bring this ship down. We have destroyed the Imperial capital ship.
Even if you wanted to ignore the meta and have fun doing something else, that doesn't matter. They'll pester you every 30 seconds or so, telling you to take the ion cannon, telling you to fire at the shields, telling you to board the ship and destroy the reactor. It's so fucking annoying and you can't turn this off. I tried, but sorry, sound effects are tied with voiceover, so either you hear all of it, or you only hear music. Oh, I'm so sorry, John Williams. This would have destroyed your fortune. I can't play you guys this audio clip like I wanted, otherwise he's gonna lose all his money. I'm so sorry. No thanks. The Rebel voiceover really has a sass to him. Not only does he tell you to pound the enemy,
full firepower on the enemy capital ship. Pound that thing to deplete their shields.
And also, sure, destroy the shields if you'd like.
Pound that thing to pound that thing to pound that thing to deplete their shields.
His tone for the word board with this particular line borders on patronizing.
Use ion cannon to deplete the enemy capital ship's shield. Only then can we board it and destroy the reactor.
Only then can we board it.
Only then can we board it and destroy the reactor.
It's like he thinks we're learning this information for the first time. Oh, really? Is that the strat? I had no idea, you insufferable cunt. It's like he feels insulted he even has to say it in the first place. Even more, Elite Squadron did a really, really unnecessary and dumb thing with the HQ voiceover. They steal your minimap to show who's talking. You'll see a floating head in place of actual useful information. Considering how often they yell at you, and how disoriented you might get due to the melee combat and indoor areas, this is a recipe for frustration. The map is vital to know where the goddamn enemies are after you've run past them, turned the wrong way, have your camera blocked by the terrain, and so on. No reason for this detail to be in the game, and especially not without some sort of option to turn it off. While the ion cannon is self-evident in how it benefits your team, I can't say the same for the orbital cannons. In the story mode, they're fairly simple, kinda. Sure, the JPEG you have to work with looks like garbage and doesn't really resemble the surface much, but still, you fire at the turrets, or the something, and you know when you've done a good job. They'll disappear, and the game will tell you the objective is completed. In Conquest, though, even though it's visually similar, it's both incoherent and seemingly inconsequential. You might see the same highlighted points as in the story mode, but they sometimes go away and sometimes don't. I don't know if shooting them is what impacts these markers disappearing or not, but considering how often I spammed this thing in desperation, all the while it seemingly did nothing, I'd wager not. These markers seem to resemble the command posts on the surface map, but I'm still unsure if those represent the ones you own or not. Sometimes my team will hold all 5 command posts and only 4 of those markers will show up. There's no indication on where anything is down there, and even when you're trying your best, cross-referencing the JPEG with your ground map, it still doesn't make sense. I know this symbol means a spawner spaceship landed there. I know it does. I've seen it many times before. It should be right in this area, but even after firing a dozen times, I don't get points, and the ship is still there on the map. I don't know if this works better when online with other players, but playing solo against bots, I never, ever got this to work in our team's favor. It was simply a waste of time for our team's best soldier, me. The HQ voiceover guy says, many times, that the orbital cannon is firing, but I don't know if he's simply full of shit, if the cannon is barely noticeable, or if I simply never saw the results of it due to random chance. One of the supposed reasons to destroy the capital ship is to get rid of the orbital cannon, but if it's this seemingly ineffective, it's another reason why this iteration on Conquest mode falls flat. Now, all that being said, there is one benefit to the shared land and space Conquest mode. Once you ignore that cocksucker in your ear, it did feel quite nice to decide to have a normal Conquest match on the ground, to decide to have a space battle, to decide to have a race to the ion cannon contest. When you're in the less than great Galactic Conquest, any and all variety is welcome to keep you from simulating the results every time due to fatigue. 2 more minor nitpicks. Because it's a cutscene shooting you into and out of the cruiser, the feeling of boarding the enemy's fleet is a bit lost in translation. Your ship auto-blows up the moment your character exits, so basically, you're launching yourself at the trigger point, then the game is teleporting you into the spawn location inside, with the ship you just had for decoration, which explodes immediately. This disconnect invites a lot of confusion. My orientation on where I am, where I need to go, is clouded by the fact that I wasn't the one who landed my own ship. The cutscene taking over when you leave is another issue, since you basically have to hope it doesn't plop you down in front of a different ship. Totally out of your control. My other nitpick has to do with landing on the surface of the planet. You evidently can't choose to land anywhere you like, you'll need to fly over one of the landing pads, maybe, otherwise the contextual button prompt won't show up. At least, I think that's the case. It's hard to say, so often it wouldn't let me, but I do have examples of it working. I don't understand why these times it worked, but others it didn't. Just look at this! Let me land! Why can't I play the game? Curse you, Yavin 4! Even when you're in the supposed right spot, the depth is really hard to gauge, since it often felt like I was still above the ground when I'd collide and blow myself up. Spamming the D-pad up is usually the best play here, an awkward struggle to land safely more often than not. By far the most interesting map for this dual combat zone transition was the Death Star. The first time I rushed towards the giant space station, realizing the only possible areas even potentially viable for my ship to land in were the openings for ships to land in, was a phenomenal feeling. It makes perfect sense, and was as close as Elite Squadron got to resembling Battlefront 2's way of doing things, docking in the enemy cruiser on your own. Speaking of the space portion of the game, Elite Squadron has some weird AI and pathing for the bots. I've never, in any other Battlefront game, had multiple instances of enemy ships colliding with me in the same match. Not only that, your allies' ships tend to stick close to you too. This is definitely intentional, but I'm not sure if this was meant to give the illusion that you have your own squadron always nearby, or if the game goes out of its way to bring the battle to you. Usually, my teammates wouldn't kill me, but they definitely ran into my ship, getting in my way, being overall awkward as hell. I would sometimes shout at my monitor, "Go have your own space battle, leave me alone!" They don't help, they simply become a nuisance. Hilariously enough, in one of the video interviews for Elite Squadron, the first bit of gameplay they show is a teammate ramming into your X-Wing in space. You can't make this up, can you? The reduced number of unique vehicles is apparent across the game, and it was especially noticeable in the air. 2 ships each faction, one of them being the spawner Space Cow variety, and the other a normal fighter. Guess I'll do my bombing runs with X-Wings and TIE fighters. On the ground floor, what stuck out to me was how often normal troopers would completely block my vehicle from moving. If you get a head start and use your dash, yeah, you can run a dude or two over, but more often, you'll get boxed in from your asshole teammates moving at a snail's pace. As far as the combat and weapon differences, the addition of a melee strike when up close seemed funny enough at first, but it really drags the whole game down. It's not a dedicated button. If you press or hold fire while being supposedly close enough to an enemy, your character will whack them with their gun. This being an automatic process is already lame, but it also means the invisibility cloak is less effective. Oh great, since he was shooting and I walked too close, he auto-meleeed and killed me. Neat. In close quarters, not only can the camera simply not keep the action on screen, but with everyone eager to ignore their blasters and pound the opposition with their own skin,
Pound that thing! Pound that thing! Pound that thing!
it becomes a numbers game with a side order of RNG. Either you'll group up and clean house with a teammate, or you'll perform a rock-paper-scissors match with your opponent. Whoever wins the arbitrary melee thumb war stuns the other, making it easy to continue the harassment until they're dead. Elite Squadron has melee weapons, 2 of them, a baton and a better baton. Somehow, even when you're wielding those, you don't get the advantage. Even with the lightsaber, they might win the coin flip. I've been smacked and stunned all the same if they got me first somehow, and the damage it deals is a bit much. That goes for the whole game, actually. I wanted to try out more of the items, but the healing packs were simply too important to not have on me with nearly every build I tried. I can't tell if I'm just worse at this game, if the lack of an unlocked chain gun meant I didn't have my tried and true, or if the targeting changes meant I couldn't keep up with the enemies as well, but surviving for long stretches without the healing items just didn't seem feasible. In Renegade, the lock-on was a lot more concrete. It'd usually always go for the enemy nearest to you, and if the enemy rolled, it would zero back in on them once it could. Now, the targeting may choose someone or something you weren't expecting, like a far-off ship or an enemy miles away for some reason. It breaks easily. Whenever they're even slightly off-screen, it'll disengage, and once they roll, holding the button doesn't work any longer. You'll need to repress it, which could introduce the other issue I've mentioned already. You'll have to hope it chooses the correct foe. It feels like Elite Squadron is a clunkier game without any real gains to show for it. The only new weapons are the batons, mostly everything else is the same, and the few that were modified, if anything, feel worse. The explosive blaster pistol now has 3 rounds before reloading, but it's not even close to as strong. A bad trade-off full stop, but it also means the carbon freeze gun has 1 less good pairing, making that less of a genuine option too. Cluster grenades and turbo laser strikes it is then. Speaking of going into first person with the turbo laser strike, a slight change to how zooming in works makes a couple of other weapons less enjoyable to use. Now going into first person with the rocket launcher or sniper means after it pulls you back into third person for a reload, like Renegade did, you'll now get shoved back into first person view without any say. You can't change weapons when reloading, so that's not the way to avoid this, and pressing triangle will zoom you back into first person, sure, but if you tried to get ahead of it, to quickly go into first person and exit back into third, trying to avoid the struggle, it doesn't matter. The game demands you be in first person view after your character is finished reloading. This is the sort of thing where I don't even understand how the designers could think this would make the game better. Going back to Renegade Squadron, yeah, it feels perfectly natural to press the zoom button again each and every time after a reload. You're in control, it's simply a part of the process. Now, especially when using the rocket to blow up the reactor, you'll have to anticipate when the first-person view will get forced onto you, and press triangle at the right time, hopefully not dying in the act. The melee weapons come with their own mechanics, namely holding X to do a heavy attack, holding triangle to block, and pressing triangle to parry? This goes for lightsabers as Jedi and Sith too. It doesn't feel good, doesn't sound good, doesn't look good. None of it is good, and I'm torn on whether this could ever work for a Battlefront game, or if this could ever work for a PSP game. Could this slot into Battlefront 2 and have some semblance of coherence, or even a genuine responsiveness that rivals fighting or action games? I'm just not buying it. Even in EA's Battlefront 2, the parry maneuver isn't a real mechanic, it's an exploit that seasoned players use for fun in duels. I don't think it would work even without the PSP limitations, but the PSP certainly isn't helping matters either. Regardless, I can't imagine how clunky this must have felt when playing online, given how unsatisfying it feels locally. Along with the customization for your unit's equipment, there are defined classes again. This is no different than choosing these loadouts yourself, so boiling it down, they're a quick select favorites list and nothing else. Who cares, it doesn't impact anything. What does impact things are the unlockable weapons. Sorry, but I don't really feel like going through the story mode on the hardest difficulty so I can have the bowcaster and chain gun. What a joke, unreal. Cosmetics, sure, I don't give a flip Saunders about them, but having those be rewards makes some sense. But gating off genuinely good weapons to use in local play? Ridiculous. I had a few go-to builds this time around, one for capturing the ion cannon, and one for boarding the ship to destroy the reactor. The combination of the wacky fuckboy stick and the rage buff was pretty powerful, good for killing enemies and rushing to a point of interest. Then, when invading their cruiser, either max speed with health packs or the personal shield. Either way, I always took the rocket launcher with me, which made quick work of the reactor. The fun of experimenting with loadouts wasn't quite as strong this time, since I had already seen most of these choices already, and my old favorite was locked from me arbitrarily. The hero selection is basically the same, but now there's some story people here, such as Fallon Gray, Master Feroda, X1 and X2, and even Cole Sarah, the main protagonist from Renegade, who shows up in the PSP version story. Oh yeah, there's this guy named Master Coda, too. I guess he's technically from the story, but he's not even on screen, I'm pretty sure. And X2, by the way, has two different selections, one with his blaster and one with his lightsaber. This game's so stupid. At the very least, it does feel like the hero saw some work, where in Renegade there was no sound associated with the connected swing. Now there's a slight psh psh noise. In Renegade, you had to practically merge with the enemy unit to make contact with the lightsaber, which angled your camera downwards. Now it feels fairly natural. Sure, the camera and targeting are still problems, but it's no different than it is in other parts of the game. Good work, Rebellion. This probably went some way in me liking the third act of campaign mode the most. Even more, Heroes vs. Villains was brought back. Is it odd that there's so many new light side heroes added with the story inclusions, but only a single new villain? Yeah, but listen, we'll take what we can get. Oh yeah, lightsaber melee combat sometimes has arm wrestling matches, and they're awkward and take forever. I had one in the story that was comically long, and not only do I have no idea what wins these, I mashed buttons as best I could but didn't see much result from it, but this is supposed to be a climactic moment in the narrative, and it's utterly goofy. Well, I guess that does sort of stack up with Star Wars though, right? The map selection is what it is. Bye-bye Korriban, Boz-Pity, Salokami, Maigito, Naboo, Sullust, and Ord Mantell. Hello, Dantooine, Bespin, Death Star, Coruscant, Cato Nemoidia, and Vune? Again, like I said, it's a horse apiece. Either you like the old maps, or you prefer the new ones. Vune and Dantooine at least offer a nice change of pace in the visual department. Deep blue and stormtrooper signage of Vune, and the wind turbines and grassy plains of Dantooine. Cato Nemoidia's premise is fascinating, and it makes for an interesting visual when approaching from space. I know it was in the movie for half a second, but still, it's cool to see. It's like the structures are built on giant architectural hammocks. More than just the swaps, they altered some of the returning planets too. Kashyyyk is now on upper walkways above the ground floor, Mustafar is on the planet's surface, so you can see the molten ground and lava up close, and Coruscant is nothing like what we saw in Battlefront 2. Hoth, Endor, Tatooine, and Yavin 4 can go to hell. I'm so fucking sick of those planets, you have no idea. Glad those are mostly the same. Can't have a Star Wars game without Yavin 4, can we? I'm being dramatic, of course. I'm happy you can do the snowspeeder strat against the AT-ATs like before, and the smaller map, this time planted with some downed vehicles like, say, another AT-AT, is a nice touch. However, a Tauntaun murder granting 5 points in Conquest mode is absolutely dastardly. And I thought they smelled bad. On the outside, Galactic Conquest is worse, from the map layouts being less open to the UI itself looking needlessly different and far more boring. Just look at this commander purchase screen. Wow, that sucks. And look at it for Renegade. Goddamn, that's slick. I'm on board with changing up the paint job to sell the fact that this is indeed a sequel, but when it's a strict downgrade, the change doesn't feel like a new snazzy wrapper, but a constant reminder that you're playing something worse. Because the maps all have 1 or 2 connections between the 2 sides of the galaxy, you'll be playing the same planets over and over again. Thank goodness there's a simulate option. This version of Galactic Conquest plays similarly to Renegade, with its risk-style turn order of acquire credits, buy troops and upgrades, move your units to a free planet or attack, then reinforce your troops when you're done. The upgrades are a little different. Now there's an increase to the customization points in battle, starting from the usual 100 and going up by 10 each upgrade. There's one to reduce the amount of damage the infantry takes, and of course the planetary troop limit increase, going from 50 to 80 to 100. Commanders are back, you can purchase their bonus if you own a section of the galaxy, and now there's what's called one-shot bonus purchases. One distracts the opponent, skipping their turn, one flips an enemy planet neutral, as long as it isn't their base, and one lets you play as a hero in the next fight. That's the only one-shot you can buy more than once, the other 2 can only be acquired once per Galactic Conquest match. On one hand, the one-shot bonuses essentially replacing the space tech from Renegade is a positive, but it still falls into a similar bucket of, this is too expensive, might as well ignore it and go for the win, like the previous game's infantry tech had. The only time it's reasonable to go for Insurgency, and especially Distraction, is if you're nearing the end of the Galactic Conquest match already and have plenty of planets to draw credits from, or you bought Leia and everything is half off. 750 credits down to 375, much more manageable. That said, I can't deny how helpful the Distraction and Insurgency one-shots are. Distraction giving you another chance to take a planet, or to take 2 if you won both, is obviously very helpful, but Insurgency, where you can turn an opposing planet neutral, is the real heavy hitter. If they had 80 troops on a planet, you're deleting all of those soldiers from existence. You can only buy 30 troops per planet each turn, and you can only reinforce, moving them around, once per turn as well. 80 units lost in an instant for nothing is a gigantic setback. 1 fewer buffer planet, 1 fewer producer of credits each turn, and at least 2 turns, if not 3, of troops deleted from said planet. Yeah, I can get why it's so expensive, but less mega and credit sapping upgrades and more cheap and incremental ones would have felt better. The slight change to how infantry upgrades work strikes me as odd too. Before it was 20% damage reduction, then the hero becomes available to play as, or a bot can take over if you refused, and now it's 15% damage reduction, then 30%. I know I complained, if you want to call it that, about Luke costing me a victory when I could have soloed on Hoth potentially, but that wouldn't have been a problem or a thought with this new style of conquest. You'll never be in the situation where you're the last person on your team, so having the hero benefit be a one-shot, meaning you'll have to buy it each time, and it being restricted to the player, I don't know, it's just not as fun of an idea. It should go without saying, but I've never seen the AI buy any of these one-shots either, meaning I rarely ever got to see heroes or any of these mega bonuses used against me. The weaponry tech is close to what I was asking for, but still off the mark. Maybe if I had my chain gun I would have felt this increase in loadout points, but I didn't, and an extra 10 or 20 just didn't seem worth it over supplying my planets with more soldiers each turn. All of this is extra disheartening since this is the sequel. This should have been an improvement over Renegade's version, but it's not. It's not even equivalent. I'd say it's just outright worse. It takes too long to buy the one-shot bonuses, they barely come into play at all. The normal upgrades are either exactly the same as before at best, or divested into something else, such as the hero upgrade not being a permanent thing and instead being a purchasable player-only reward, and the commanders don't really have much of an impact since it's usually smarter to keep buying troops when you can. Sure, attacking from a different sector is neat, as is attacking twice per turn, but unless you bought Leia to lower the other prices, or are just sticking around playing with your food, these don't see a lot of use. Maybe for the victory lap when you're nearing completion, but that's about it. Now that we've seen 4 takes on Galactic Conquest, let's do some ranking and overall analysis. Battlefront 2's take on it is the best. The overabundance of space battles might get a little tedious, but credits being used for many one-time buffs, along with unlocking more classes to pick from, is just fantastic. Having a simulate option would have been great, as would having the Death Star and Tantive 4 as available maps. We should give Elite Squadron some credit, right? Death Star is included in its Galactic Conquest. Second place goes to Renegade Squadron, but it's close. The risk style of reinforcing and moving troops around isn't bad, simulating battles is nice, the commanders and upgrades are all decent, besides the space-focused ones, of course, and the UI itself, the visuals, simply look outstanding. It helps that I prefer the map selection in Renegade, of course, so I have fond memories of battling in Ord Mantell and Selikamai. Third place goes to the original Battlefront. 2 maps each planet, plus getting a buff of some kind when you own a planet is excellent. I really, really wish both of those ideas carried over into the sequel, but on their own, they can't really compete with the board game aesthetic or unlocking of upgrades. Finally, last place goes to Elite Squadron. Distraction and Insurgency are definitely better than the space upgrade tree in Renegade, absolutely, but besides that, the visuals look worse, the maps themselves, in my opinion, are worse, there aren't enough connections between planets on the galactic map itself, and the Conquest mode being drastically modified means it's harder to understand how your total troop number is influencing things. In Renegade, it was very clear, 40 versus 80, yeah. Now though, it's a race to 1,000, and both teams start at 0. I tried looking at how many players, bots of course, each team received for how many troops were brought in, and I couldn't spot a pattern. Maybe it's a ratio, I'm not sure, but even still, no way on Earth should there be 6 to 8 soldiers chilling out in the enemy hangar. It's confusing, and it doesn't translate well to this Risk-style Galactic Conquest. There you have it, folks, the one true Galactic Conquest rankings. I hope you agree, but if not, tell me why. I'd love to hear your opinions and memories with this game mode. The story is pretty rough. There's only so many times I can play a fucking Star Wars campaign and do the Hoth thing, do the Yavin 4 thing, do the Endor thing, do the Tatooine thing. It's routine at this point. I'm beyond sick of it. I can't tell you how hard my eyes rolled when hearing it was under the twin suns of Tatooine where our story truly began.
It was under the twin suns of Tatooine this story truly began.
Oh yeah? Really? Crazy, the clones picked Tatooine of all places, this worthless junk desert planet, one that allows slavery, mind you, as an outpost to train clones. It was an early victory for the Republic? What the fuck are we talking about? Let's go through the key points of the story, The Kaminoans secretly made twin clones from the DNA of a Jedi, known only as X1 and X2. The brothers fight with the clones until Order 66, where they betray their Jedi dude, Master Feroda, who they apparently care about or something. Jump cut, basically, to X2, the one you control, being on the side of the rebels, discovering his true father, Fallon Gray, randomly, and having a fight with his twin brother, X1. X1 does the most feminine Yas Queen pose before shooting his brother, and after losing to Fallon Gray but being spared, he ends up killing his estranged father for funsies. X1 wants more power, is on the side of Vader and Palpatine, hunting down the rebels and Jedi, but even still, leaves his brother alive and fucks off for some reason. Neat. Oh, sorry, the bad cutscene afterward says X1 left X2 for dead, then just moves on. Neat. If you're worried about confusing the brothers, X1 and X2, don't worry, the developers were clearly terrified the player would forget which one they were, as 80% of all voice lines in the story involve a character addressing the protagonist by name.
We are poised to strike at the heart of the settlements, X2. Hold the line, X2. Take out those droids. Clear those turrets, X2. Time to commence the ground attack. Get to an ARC 170, X2. This is where the fun begins. Hurry, X2. Quickly, X2. Keep going, X2. Focus on your objective. This staircase is damaged, but the Force is with you, X2. Jump it.
This isn't how people talk, Rebellion. On that note, holy fuck do they want to hammer home the brother dynamic in the first mission.
We're kept you, little brother. Nice shooting, brother. Way to go, brother. Take this, little brother, and swing away. Nice work, brother.
Great job, little brother. Damn, I can't join you up there, little brother.
What are you waiting for, little brother? That trooper could use our help, little brother. Not bad, little brother.
Good to be back at the controls of a starfighter, huh, little brother? What I call a victory, little brother. There will be medal in this for both of us.
This isn't selling their brotherly connection, this is just stating familial relations over and over. Since we've speedran the prequel films, let's do the same for the original trilogy. Neat. Oh, X2 was actually really important. Helping the people evacuate Yavin 4, then helping the people evacuate Hoth? Super cool lore, dude. Let me go add it to Wikipedia. In the Hoth mission, there's a brotherly confrontation.
It's a mistake easily.
Yeah, this about sums up Elite Squadron's campaign mode. That's the only line he says in this battle, by the way. I spammed the blaster rifle at him to win the fight. Super climactic. Afterwards, like directly after, the ship explodes and the mission is over. At least there's a small bit of fun in the next level. Sure, it's Endor, but you start in space near the half-constructed Death Star number 2, and eventually Cole Serra, leader of Renegade Squadron, contacts you to ask for help. Yes, Cole also says the player character's name every other sentence. How did you know?
Welcome to Endor, X2. Help free them, X2. Liberate those Ewoks, X2. Nice work freeing those Ewoks, X2. Head to the communications bunker, X2. Hustle it up, X2. I'm making my approach.
Good to see you, X2. Are you ready for X2? Get up, X2. I need you focused. Cannons this way, X2. Time for some target practice, X2. Those Star Destroyers, X2. Great work, X2. Take out that second AT-AT, X2. Great job, X2.
Want to hear how this robot of a character sums up the end of the fucking Empire?
Vader and Palpatine were slain.
Vader and Palpatine were slain. Gosh, this is so bad. Thankfully, it genuinely improves from here. No, not the story or the voice acting, but the gameplay. Going through the motions with all of the movie tie-in missions was pretty boring, but afterwards we finally see something original. Is it kinda ridiculous that Luke Skywalker trains our character? Yeah, but this was long before Disney erased all of this and did their own thing. I couldn't tell you if this makes sense with the Legends novels or anything, but it did feel pretty needless. Either way, the idea of a Jedi clone is conceptually solid. Now that X2 is a Super Saiyan, every mission sees you walking around and crushing everyone down with the lightsaber. It's pretty sick, and there's even some special enemy units, the Ultra Instinct Dark Troopers. You have to admit, these guys look undeniably cool. If you think they're lame, I don't think you have the capacity to like Star Wars, sorry. The first mission on Bespin is pretty fun, since Lando is in your ear the whole time, and you have to rescue... headphones guy. Largo? Lugo? Lucas? Hang on, what the fuck's this guy's name? Lando... headphones... friend... Lobot. And you have to go rescue Lobot. Everyone loves Lobot and Lando, and if you don't, I don't think you have the capacity to like Star Wars, sorry. The Vader's castle location has some interesting visuals, the helmets in Vader's trophy room, and also the glorious T-pose shown off by one of the enemy troopers. What a sport. The droid bodyguard enemies are new at least, even if they aren't especially fun to fight, but...
Looks like Vader's personal droid bodyguard is still online. I have a bad feeling about this.
I mean, really, did Luke need to say the Star Wars line? Oh god, I'm gonna be sick. Oh, Luke was captured by X1. X1 is gonna make an army of Jedi clones. Huh, a bit abrupt, but alright. He actually makes clones of a lot of things, even Wookiees, which you'll have to fight off. This is a rad idea, all things considered, they just don't do a whole lot with it in this rough-around-the-edges PSP game. There's a few final duels with your brother here on Mustafar. As we all know, this is the epic lightsaber dueling planet, naturally. If you don't want to do a real 1v1 with your brother, no big deal, spam lightsaber throw and it'll all be over in a few seconds. The victory cutscene at least has something going for it. X1 does a fancy thing, and X2 does a flippy thing, and then the saber thing gets jammed into X1's stomach thing. And then the game is done. The final cutscene is just the Millennium Falcon gang plus one random lady who showed up one mission, patting you on the back. Whoa, pretty cool. I actually totally forgot who this chick was. I think she shows up in the DS version too. Anyway, the story mode sucks, both the gameplay and the narrative. Using a lightsaber at the end was a breath of fresh air compared to everything else, and I do love Lando, but even still, it couldn't save this turd. The mission structure, the objectives themselves, are so wonky and lack a real sense of progression. As an example, let me go through the entirety of the Dantooine level. We've just jumped from defeating Master Feroda, our Jedi guy on Coruscant, to watching a small movie visual cutscene that says nothing specific, and then we spawn on Dantooine for some reason. First objective, protect the villagers, which means holding off waves of stormtroopers. Are they all gone? Is it done? I'm waiting here and... oh, there's a guy. Oh, there's another. Oh, sorry, there's one guy way over here that I have to kill. Sure thing. Next up, lay mines on the bridge.
Lay mines on that bridge. That will slow them down.
Oh, sorry, I didn't quite catch that. Could you repeat it?
Imperial reinforcements are en route. Set those lines.
Okay, cool. What's that?
Using no clones must have taken my genetic information without my consent. With it, they may use my son and your brother, X1.
You're my dad? Neat, thanks, Dad. Awesome to know right at this moment in time. Very neat.
I'm coming for you, X2. First Fallon Gray will die, then it will be your turn.
Oh, X1 can talk to us for some reason. He's coming for us, and he knows Fallon Gray by name. Neat.
I am proud to have you as my son, and it is not too late to turn your brother from the dark side. There is good in him still.
Dad says he's proud of me. Cool, thanks, Pop of 3 minutes. Turret section, escort troop section. Fallon Gray gives us a mere 1 second before reprimanding us for not doing the objective like he wants.
We need to get the troops to safety. Escort them to the ruins of the old Jedi Enclave. You're letting our men die, X2. Do something.
Bad parenting, and I should know. You gotta encourage your child, not punish them for letting your soldiers die. Whack, whack, whack. Empire ship shoots and creates a pile of rocks. Blow up the pile of rocks. Got it. Go through a cave, end up in a hangar. Open up the door, but I can't. It's blocked. Dad says to clear the debris. He does this fucking pose. Meanwhile, his cape gloriously sways in the breeze. And the objective marker points me to the door. Wait, it really wants me to go around the entire map? Okay, here we go. Blow up more rocks. Use ion cannon to destroy shield, my favorite. Now Dad says to return to the hangar, and he doesn't open the door for me? Okay, let me walk all the way back. What now, Pops? Put the rocks back? Got it, rocks are there again. And now we have to open the hangar door. What the fuck? Man, Daddy Gray couldn't open up the goddamn hangar door for me? Why did I even have to use the ion cannon to destroy the shield? It didn't matter in the slightest. Placing the mines on the bridge was arguably even more pointless. Just an exercise in switching classes for the sake of propping up the customization system. With the dialogue, it's some of the worst I've ever heard. I've played games where the delivery is either bad or flat. I've played games where they give you hints and hold your hand too much, but both of those and every character won't stop addressing you by name? It was a coin flip if they'd say X2 or not, and the anticipation was too much to bear.
Why the delay, X2? Master Windu needs your assistance. Nice shooting, X2. That will turn the tide against the invaders. We need you on the ground right away. Get to an escape pod and help out our ground forces. Hurry, X2. We need your assistance on the ground.
I rolled my eyes so hard my entire head moved. I think I have some neck pain, actually, from the repeated motions. They don't give you a moment to breathe. They get on your ass within seconds to tell you you're doing a poor job. It's like they didn't want to put this recorded dialogue to waste, so they jammed it in, assuring that everyone would hear it regardless of how good they were playing. Excellent work, Rebellion. Some characters were ridiculously quiet for no reason, like Mace Windu.
It's time to take the fight to the end. Here, this electrostatic
Many missions end abruptly, such as the droids disappearing after we defeated Grievous. The main character refusing to wear a helmet is absurd. This is a fucking PSP game. The graphics are putrid anyway. His face looks like a JPEG, so who gives a shit? And the names of the brothers are so pointlessly clinical. Call them something else, please. Why are we so obsessed with the letter X? X was the parasite in Metroid Fusion, Chemical X was needed to create the Powerpuff Girls, and... well, I don't really want to say the last example I thought of. Why not call X2 Xander after a while, or, I don't know, Chauncey? It's bad enough he sounds like a robot, but to have a robotic name too cruel. The cutscenes all being footage from the movies is underwhelming at best, and borderline lazy at worst. Oh, X1 is becoming a Sith Lord? Show all of the movie Sith Lords, sure, why not? Furthermore, the dry voiceover from X2 provides practically nothing to the experience. It handwaves a ton of information, yet still can't explain why we're on fucking Dantooine. I don't feel the bond between these two brothers at all, and none of their character interactions were interesting or meaningful. For this story to work, you need to buy into it, and it was impossible to, since they barely talked after Order 66, and even when they did, it was one sentence or two. Why on earth would they allude to X1 and X2 being present in battles during the cutscenes?
Our X1 and I was just another chance to prove ourselves in battle.
Only for X1 not to talk or show up during the actual game? He's only in your ear on the first mission. What a waste. And this, funny enough, is where the DS version comes into play. I don't have a way to record my gameplay on the DS, so I'll use some long play footage, which I'll credit down below. Rest assured, I played through this fucking pile of garbage. Don't you worry, I did, just for you. Before we get into why I hated my time with this version, I'll give it credit. They actually told the story. There's no voice acting, it's all text on screen to read. Is it always easy, looking down at the bottom screen to absorb the dialogue while I'm trying to stay alive on the top? No, but at least that meant the poor line delivery didn't get in the way. Plus, this isn't really where the character interactions are. They mostly take place before and after levels, where you can digest the words and see a nice visual image to accompany it. In the DS version, you have a lot more discussions with your brother, and they properly show the differences between the two twins early on. They talk about the Jedi and hint that X1 will gladly turn against them. The Order 66 sequence actually has some weight to it. X2 is confused as to what's going on. He sees Master Furoda strike down his brother, strike down a whole platoon of clones, and this is what triggers the fight. They talk as they exchange blows, and at the end, even in this shitty N64 equivalent graphical style, they show more personality in-engine than the PSP's version ever tried. X2 drops his gun after the victory and shakes his head. Want to see what happens in the PSP's take on this? The Order 66 line is voice acted, then we run up to Furoda, he says he senses the good in X2 to not do it, and we proceed to have a very lukewarm battle with him. Furoda mentions X2 has become corrupted, much like his brother, but this isn't really alluding to anything. We haven't even seen X1 this entire mission. In fact, we haven't seen X1 since the beginning Tatooine mission. Obi-Wan was in our comlink during the Coruscant level, then Furoda in the Kaito Nemoidia one. We get one mission with X1 in the PSP version, whereas on the DS, they have a whole visual novel section before each level, letting them talk. The Dantooine level makes 1,000 times more sense. X2 hadn't left the Empire yet. It's only him hearing about the Empire's ambitions to murder everyone in the village, innocent civilians and Jedi alike, that he defects and rushes to go assist the people on the planet. The introduction to Fallon Gray feels a lot more fitting. Now it's actually, you know, a thing. They meet, Fallon Gray can tell who X2 is by looking at him. See, good thing he had his helmet off, right? And the father-son relationship, plus the fact that X2 is a Jedi, are revealed organically through the visual novel portion. The Fallon Gray X1 encounter makes more sense, since X1 lies about giving up and wanting to spare everyone, and then he kills him. X1 in this version leaves X2 on Dantooine on purpose, in shame and inequity, as he says. They show Luke talking with X2 about being a Jedi. They put some screen time dedicated to it. You want to see the lengths the PSP version is willing to go?
So you're a Jedi now, X2. Luke must think pretty highly of you.
So, you're a Jedi now, huh?
Somehow Palpatine returned.
Sure, there is a line a long time ago from Furoda saying he wants to show X2 to the Council or whatever, but a few loose story foreshadowing lines tossed into the melting pot alongside
X2.
Little brother,
Little brother, little brother.
little brother, little brother.
doesn't really work for me. The DS version teases the X1 cloning plan much earlier on, and listen, you get the point, N-Space actually tried to feature a narrative. It's a shame then that the gameplay of the DS version makes me want to vomit. The long play says it's roughly 4 hours, but dear God, if you told me it was 10, I wouldn't bat an eye. It's so mindless and basic. Sure, it's less clunky than the PSP version, given it's top-down and your camera won't get blocked by tight corridors, but I'm not sure it was worth the trade-off. fighting off waves of fodder enemies, just so many of them. Oh, the door is locked. Gotta find the terminal to open it. A dozen more troopers. Oh no, it's an ambush. 100 more troopers. Oh no, it's my mom. 1,000 more troopers. Oh, hi, Mark. 1,000,000 more troopers. It's a very boring time. They try to spice things up with some other types of gameplay. Turrets, speeder bike, and dogfighting. I didn't mind the speeder bike parts, even if the ATSTs look ridiculously tiny and weird on the Hoth level. Also, shout out to Ash21, who crashed into the invisible wall under the AT-AT just like I did. Yeah, I'm not sure why they didn't think the players would want to go underneath the AT-ATs, it's almost like they're encouraging it. And the turret sections were welcome enough deviations, but the dogfighting, oh my god, please, please, no more, I can't take it. At one point, X2 said, "No, I'm not running from the Empire anymore, we're taking the cruiser down." And I nearly curled up in a ball and cried my eyes out. Make it stop, please! You only have the X-axis to work with, so you play merry-go-round and shoot the faraway pixels until you've won the day. Oh, what's that? More TIE fighters? Please, stop. At least the Death Star run was a worthwhile inclusion. There's also a few choices you get to make along the way, either send troops here or send them there, and I don't really know what it changes. If I had to guess, it alters what the very next section of gameplay looks like, since if you chose the demolition option, you had to destroy the shield generators in a flyby turret segment. For all the flack I've been giving the gameplay of the DS version, their boss fights are quite a step up from the PSP's version. I mean, in a vacuum they're not good at all, but when looking at both games side by side, it may as well be Sekiro by comparison. Instead of jacking Grievous off with your stick while Mace Windu silently watches on, you have to blast him into traffic with explosives. What the, that line is so ridiculous. Ugh. Feroda deflects gunshots back at you if you attack. Okay. Feroda deflects gunshots back at you if you attack head on, so you have to figure out how to get behind him, knocking him down with explosives and such. You get to have an actual duel with your brother X1 in the Hoth level, where he's already making use of the lightsaber he stole from Fallon Gray, and he even force pushes shit at you. There's a Rancor fight where you'll need to use your force powers to throw rubble at him, and a Night Sister battle afterwards with a similar gimmick. Yeah, in the DS version, you visit Dathomir. Crazy, right? The final boss fight with X2 is a lot more climactic and drawn out, and hilariously enough, the same backflip lightsaber dodge choreography takes place, but in DS form. It's funny how much more N-Space nailed the narrative aspect over Rebellion when they clearly had the same outline and story beats, even down to the way X2 dies. Since we're already here, the DS version has instant action mode alongside its single-player story. It's kind of like Conquest, with command posts and the like, but it caps out at 4 total players per game, including bots. It's a 4-way match, and it doesn't feel the best. I didn't give it a whole lot of time, admittedly, but it's nowhere on the levels of Metroid Prime Hunters or anything. At the end of the day, Elite Squadron is a disappointment. I've heard the stories of how this was taken from the framework of the cancelled Battlefront 3, and that got me excited to see what was all here. And it's basically Renegade, but worse, with some new maps, a stick or two, a mediocre original story, and their attempt at a seamless land and space battle all in one. I don't know what I was expecting. Maybe more weapons? Even ignoring all the quibbles I mentioned that one could overlook if the game was great, I really didn't love my time with this entry. The campaign didn't utilize the customization as well as the previous games, the Galactic Conquest was worse, the Conquest mode itself was heavily tweaked, and it's up to you on if it's better or not. This didn't feel like the jump from Battlefront 1 to Battlefront 2, but it also didn't feel like the shift from Battlefront 2 to Renegade Squadron. It's a slightly different squadron, one that I'm not sure I'll ever return to in the future.
Pound that thing!
Thanks for watching, folks, and thanks to the people at Patreon who give me money to whack Grievous off with my stick. Sign up if you want early access to videos, and to take part in a poll once in a while. You can also sign up for free, and from here on out, I'll be trying to write updates for anyone to see, so it's worth following even for that. For more consistent updates and thoughts, follow me on Blue Sky. I've been posting about my Knights of the Old Republic playthrough recently. Very, very good game. I was worried it wouldn't live up to my expectations, since it's been 15 years at least since I played it, and no, it's awesome, I love it. Lastly, if you'd like, you can join my Discord, where we chat about stupid stuff and play the odd Helldivers 2 or Left 4 Dead 2 game now and then. Alright, that's it for me. Thanks for watching, have a good one.